There is a sound that every Israeli knows, the sharp crack of an Iron Dome interceptor rising from its launcher, followed by the distant thud of a successful interception overhead. That sound has defined life under threat in this country for over a decade. Tonight, that sound is gone. 200 missiles are falling on Tel Aviv and nothing is rising to stop them. The batteries are silent. The launchers are not firing. The most tested short-range air defense system in modern warfare has ceased to operate against the largest single wave of missiles ever directed at an Israeli city. The videos coming out of Tel Aviv right now are unlike anything documented in any previous wave of this conflict. In every prior Iranian strike, the footage had a familiar visual grammar, missiles streaking across the sky, followed within seconds by the bright ascending trails of Iron Dome interceptors rising to meet them, the explosions overhead, the interceptions, the system working. Tonight, that visual grammar has been erased. The footage shows missiles arriving, impact after impact after impact, fires erupting across multiple districts simultaneously, and the sky above Tel Aviv is empty. There are no interceptor trails. There are no defensive launches. There is no familiar crack of Iron Dome batteries engaging their targets. The silence of the defense system is more terrifying than the explosions themselves. 200 missiles in a single wave means that across the Tel Aviv metropolitan area, impacts are not arriving sequentially. They are arriving simultaneously. Neighborhoods that in previous waves had minutes between alerts are now experiencing multiple strikes within the same 60-second window. Emergency services that were designed to respond to isolated intercept failures, the small percentage of rockets that historically slipped through Iron Dome's coverage, are now facing a scenario for which no Israeli emergency protocol was built. Every ambulance, every fire unit, every civil defense team is being called in every direction at once. The infrastructure of response is being overwhelmed, not because it is inadequate, but because it was never designed for a reality in which nothing is being intercepted. The footage from residential areas shows what undefended bombardment looks like in a modern city. Windows blown inward across entire blocks. Car alarms triggered by successive shock waves, creating walls of noise beneath the sirens. Residents who emerged from shelters after previous waves, trusting the worst had been intercepted, are now caught in the opens as impacts land without anything between the warhead and the ground. Let us be precise about what Iron Dome shutdown means, because the distinction matters and the language matters. There are three possible states that produce the result we are seeing tonight. The first is radar saturation. 200 simultaneous inbound targets may exceed the tracking capacity of the deployed radar arrays, meaning the system literally cannot process enough targets to generate firing solutions. A dream. The second is interceptor depletion. Each Iron Dome battery carries a finite number of Tamir interceptors. If the previous waves consumed the available stock and resupply has not kept pace, the launchers may simply be empty. The third possibility is a deliberate command decision. Israeli air defense commanders, recognizing that the remaining interceptor inventory is insufficient to defeat a wave of this size, may have made the calculated choice to conserve what remains for a potential follow-up wave, rather than expend their last interceptors in an engagement they cannot win. Any of those three explanations leads to the same visual result: missiles falling on Tel Aviv with nothing rising to stop them. But the strategic implications of each are profoundly different. Radar saturation is a temporary technical limitation that can potentially be addressed with additional assets. Depletion is a logistics crisis requiring resupply timelines measured in days or weeks. A deliberate conservation decision means Israeli commanders have already concluded that the current engagement is unwinnable and are planning for the next one. Each demands a different response, a different timeline, a different calculation of alarm, but all three converge on one visible truth tonight. Tel Aviv is exposed. The Patriot batteries that remain operational in the theater were never designed for this engagement profile. Patriots, even the advanced PAC-3 variant, are optimized for high-altitude ballistic intercepts and terminal phase engagement against longer-range threats. The short-range high-volume saturation profile that Iron Dome was specifically built to handle is outside the Patriot system's designed operational role. Asking Patriot to fill the gap left by Iron Dome's shutdown is asking a system to perform a mission it was not engineered for, against a threat volume it was not configured to absorb. Iranian military planners understood this layered defense architecture. They understood that each system had a specific role and specific limitations, and they designed a strike package of 200 simultaneous missiles to exploit the exact threshold where Iron Dome's capacity ends and Patriot's capability does not begin. This was not a lucky barrage. This was an engineered saturation event built on years of observation, calibrated to exceed the precise mathematical ceiling of the deployed defense configuration. The result is visible on the skyline of Tel Aviv tonight. Iron Dome was never just a weapons system. It was a political promise. For over a decade, it was the answer Israeli leaders gave to their citizens when rockets were fired from Gaza, from Lebanon, from anywhere within range. The promise was simple. You can go about your lives. The system will protect you. Schools stayed open during conflicts because of Iron Dome. Restaurants stayed full. The Tel Aviv economy continued to function under conditions that would have paralyzed any other city on Earth, because everyone understood that the missiles would be intercepted. That promise is broken tonight. And a broken defense promise in the middle of a war is not a technical problem. It is a political crisis that moves at the speed of fear through a population that has just discovered the shield they built. Their daily lives around is no longer standing between them and what is falling from the sky. The political shockwave from Iron Dome's failure extends far beyond Israel's borders. Every American defense official who pointed to Iron Dome as evidence that missile defense technology works, every congressional appropriation that funded its development and resupply, every arms deal that used its operational record as a selling point, is now being measured against the footage the entire world is watching tonight. 200 missiles, 0 interceptions. That image is being absorbed right now in Riyadh, in Abu Dhabi, in every capital that has purchased or considered purchasing American air defense technology as the foundation of its national security. The question those governments are asking tonight is not abstract. If Iron Dome cannot hold against a sustained Iranian strike campaign, what does that mean for the systems we are relying on? And that question does not have a comfortable answer. The deterrence equation that governed this conflict from its opening hours has inverted. Israel and the United States entered this operation on the assumption that Israeli population centers could absorb Iranian retaliatory strikes, because Iron Dome and Patriot together would limit the damage to manageable levels. Manageable meant politically survivable. It meant that the images coming out of Tel Aviv would show interceptions, not impacts. It meant that the story of this conflict in American and Israeli media would be one of effective defense enabling decisive offense. That assumption is gone. The story tonight is not about interceptions. It is about a city of 4 million people being struck by missiles that nothing is stopping. And every decision that follows, every escalation calculation, every diplomatic signal, every military order issued in the next 12 hours will be shaped by that reality. There is an escalation pressure building in both Washington and Tel Aviv tonight that is fundamentally different from anything in the previous phases of this conflict. When your primary defense is functioning, you have options. You can absorb strikes and retaliate on your own timeline. You can calibrate your response. You can negotiate from a position where your population is protected. When your primary defense has shut down, those options collapse. The pressure shifts overwhelmingly toward offensive action, toward striking the launch sites, the supply chains, the command infrastructure, anything that prevents the next wave from being assembled, because you can no longer rely on stopping it once it is in the air. That pressure is not theoretical tonight. It is operational. And it is pushing toward decisions that carry escalation risks nobody fully mapped before this conflict began. The questions that matter most right now are the ones nobody can answer with certainty. Can Iron Dome be restored? If interceptor depletion is the cause, Resupply timelines depend on production capacity and logistics chains that operate on schedules measured in weeks, not hours. If radar saturation is the cause, additional battery deployments could potentially restore partial coverage, but moving and calibrating those assets under active bombardment conditions is an operation with no safe margin for error. And underneath all of it sits the hardest question of this conflict. How many more missiles does Iran have? If the inventory exists for a third wave of this scale, then restoration is a race against the clock that Israel may not win. If Iranian planners followed standard doctrine and preserved strategic depth, the missiles used tonight represent a fraction of what remains. That possibility is the one keeping commanders in Washington and Tel Aviv awake right now, recalculating every assumption they brought into this operation 48 hours ago. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. That phrase has been quoted in every military academy on Earth for generations. It is not a counsel of despair. It is a recognition that the enemy has a voice in how every conflict unfolds, and the measure of leadership is not whether surprises occur, but how you respond when they do. The surprise tonight is 200 missiles and a silent Iron Dome. The surprise is a city without its shield. The surprise is that the defense architecture assembled at extraordinary cost and deployed with absolute confidence has met a threat it cannot answer. How Washington and Tel Aviv respond to that surprise, whether they find an off-ramp or climb further up the escalation ladder, whether the next hours bring reinforcement or further deterioration, will define what this conflict becomes. We do not have those answers tonight. Nobody does. What we have is what you are seeing on your screens right now. A city under fire with nothing between its people and the sky. We are not leaving this story. The moment there is a development, a shift, a decision, we will bring it to you.